I'm going to keep this straightforward because I know a lot of you are sitting on the fence with a 100-inch screen in the room. You've probably seen the glossy ads, the bright room hype, and the promises of the ultimate home cinema experience. What I want to do is walk through the real-world experience of the Hisense 100-inch E6 paired with the AX3100Q sound system, point out where it actually shines, and where it might leave you reaching for the remote control pause button. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about the kind of space this TV demands. A 100-inch diagonal translates to about 87 inches wide, so you need a wall or a stand that can comfortably handle that footprint. In a typical living room, the sweet spot for viewing distance is roughly 10 to 12 feet, which most families can manage, but if you're in a tighter apartment, the screen can feel overwhelming. The E6 is a QLED panel, which means it leans on quantum dot technology for richer colors, but it doesn't have the same peak brightness as a premium OLED. In a sunlit room, the picture will still be clear, yet you'll notice a slight washout compared to a true HD high-end model. That's not a deal-breaker for most streaming content, but if you plan to use the TV as a primary monitor for bright room gaming or daytime sports, you might want to invest in blackout curtains or a dimmer lighting setup. The bundle includes the AX3100Q sound system, a 3.1-channel speaker array that promises 500 watts of total output. In practice, the speakers sit low to the floor, creating a solid bass foundation without needing a separate subwoofer. When I ran a couple of action movies and a recent first-person shooter, the directional effects from Dolby Atmos were surprisingly immersive for a built-in system. You'll feel explosions coming from the sides, and dialogue stays crisp even during fast-moving scenes. That said, the system isn't a full-blown home theater setup. If you're a true audiophile who expects cinema-grade sound, you'll probably want a dedicated AV receiver and a set of upward-firing speakers for a more expansive overhead feel. One of the most practical questions is how the TV integrates with everyday streaming. Hisense has built Fire TV directly into the E6, meaning you get the familiar Amazon ecosystem without an extra box. The interface is responsive, and you can switch between Netflix, Disney+, and Prime Video with just a few clicks on the remote. The remote itself is a little bulky, but it has dedicated buttons for voice search and quick access to your favorite apps. Because the Fire TV layer runs on the same hardware, there's no noticeable lag when you open a show or fire up a game console. Speaking of consoles, the HDMI 2.1 ports are worth a mention. The E6 supports variable refresh rate and auto-low latency mode, so if you have a next-gen PlayStation or Xbox, you'll see smooth motion and reduced input lag. I tested a racing title that pushes 120 frames per second, and the TV kept up without stuttering. The only caveat is that you need to enable the game mode manually, otherwise the TV defaults to its picture enhancement algorithms, which can add a few milliseconds of delay. For casual gamers, the default picture looks great, but competitive players will want to dive into the settings. Now, who should actually consider buying this bundle? If you already own a decent sound system or you're okay with using a soundbar instead of a full surround speaker setup, the AX3100Q adds enough oomph to make the TV feel more cinematic without breaking the bank. Families that binge-watch shows, host occasional movie nights, and want a large screen for sports will appreciate the sheer size and the decent HDR performance. The Fire TV integration also means fewer cables and a cleaner setup, which is a plus for anyone who isn't a tech wizard. Who should skip it? If you live in a small apartment where a 100-inch screen dominates the room, the size itself becomes a drawback rather than a luxury. Likewise, if you're a true cinephile with a high-end audio-visual rig already in place, you'll find the built-in QLED panel and the 3.1-channel sound system a step down from the premium OLEDs and dedicated Atmos speaker arrays that can cost twice as much. Also, if you rely heavily on bright room viewing without any light control, you might notice the HDR highlights flatten a bit compared to a TV that pushes over 1000 nits. Let's address the price-to-value equation. The headline spec list reads 100-inch QLED, Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, 500W audio. Those are impressive buzzwords, but the real value comes from the combination of size, built-in Fire TV, and a decent sound system that doesn't require a separate purchase. You're essentially paying for a single-unit solution that would otherwise cost you 3 separate pieces: a large TV, a streaming box, and a soundbar. When you compare the total cost of buying those components individually, the Hisense bundle lands in a competitive range. There are a couple of hidden trade-offs worth noting. The TV's stand is sturdy, but the weight of a 100-inch panel means you'll